What interdimensional meditation feels like. What is interdimensional meditation? DMT is the interdimensional gateway, but the good news is that your body produces DMT naturally. So you can create this interdimensional gateway within yourself without having to ingest any external chemicals. Let me repeat myself. You can create DMT and create an interdimensional gateway within yourself without ever having to ingest any external chemicals. How can you do this naturally? Also, I am inviting all of you to join the army of interdimensional warriors. In order to destroy the 3D prison matrix, 3D weapons will not work against the third dimension. Learn how to defeat tyrants without ever lifting a finger by doing interdimensional meditation and using interdimensional weapons. Hi, this is Mahadev, the Thunder Wizard. This might be one of the most important videos I've ever made. It's going to be the beginning of new videos that I'm going to be talking about, which may very well be the single most important, powerful way to completely shift history. This might be the most important time in the history of the human race and planet Earth and perhaps even the universe. That's how important this is. That's how important you are. So, I'm going to be making other videos which I will upload to Rumble having to do with how really we can destroy the 3D prison matrix narrative. But I won't talk about that here on YouTube because YouTube has some rules about what you can and cannot say. So, in this video, we are going to stick with things that we can talk about on YouTube. So, what is interdimensional meditation? What does it feel like? If you're on my channel, you've definitely heard me talk about interdimensional meditation. You have definitely heard me talk about my interdimensional shamanic journeys and continuing experiences, even right now as I sit here talking to you, with interdimensional beings of light. But everybody is different. All of you have different gifts. You're made up differently. You have different experiences. You are, in different places in terms of your evolution towards the 5D mindset. And everybody's astrological chart is different. And right now what I'm doing is I'm still gathering data to find out what people can most likely expect when they do interdimensional shamanic journey meditations. Now, I happen to have Jupiter retrograde in Pisces in the 8th house. So now, if you know anything about Vedic astrology and you have watched me since June of last year, you'll go, that explains everything. In the beginning, I thought everybody was going to have the same experience as me. And it turns out that's not true. Some people have very pleasant experiences. Some people have intense experiences. Some people have experiences that are similar to mine. And, my spiritual advisor, when he learned that I was doing CE5 and I was telling him about all the crazy stuff that was happening, he tried interdimensional meditation and he had a very different experience. And he did have an experience, but it was very different from mine. And after discussing it with him and talking about it, we both came to the conclusion that it's because he has a very specific religious and spiritual practice. And so the light beings just sort of sit back and watch. And if he wants to say hello, they'll say hello to him. But other than that, they leave him alone. They really want him to do his internal meditation and his work that he's really committed to. Well, so although he and I have a lot in common, there's one thing that is different about me. I am a fierce warrior. Now, I'm not a warrior in the physical sense. I don't own any weapons. I have no interest in any type of 3D warfare. Zero. Let me tell you, first, as I said on here, that 3D weapons will not work against the 3D elites. So let me tell you what 3D weapons are. 3D weapons are speaking. It's probably the first weapon anybody ever uses is speaking. That's a 3D weapon. Going and launching blogs, that's a 3D weapon. Going out on the street and picketing, activism, that's a 3D weapon. Politics, 3D weapon. Of course, anything having to do with a physical weapon like guns, knives, those things, those are 3D weapons. You cannot use those against the 3D elite. The 3D elite have far, far, far more 3D weapons than you can imagine. They have technologies that you would think were extraterrestrial. They're so amazing. They're so powerful. But they're 3D weapons, even though they might seem supernatural to you. So you cannot use any of those weapons against the 3D because they are 100, they're probably 1,000 years ahead of you in terms of their technology. So don't even waste your time. But there are weapons that the 3D elite cannot fight against. And those are interdimensional weapons. Those are weapons that you can only access when you are deep in shamanic journey meditation. So that's what we're talking about. Let me give you some other 3D weapons that will not work against 3D. Anger, retribution, vengeance, self-righteousness, victim mentality. These are all 3D weapons, and they're used by our 3D system. It's just part of the third dimension. We live in a dimension where we are under the delusion that we are isolated. That's part of 3D. In fact, your soul chose to come here in order to experience isolation so that you could strengthen your own experience of your own internal identity. And this is where the problem lies, because then people tend to identify with their third dimensional reality instead of their multidimensional infinite spirit. And that is the whole point. That's how you strengthen your identity, is to seek after the spiritual. To seek after, even if we're not talking spiritual, seek after your integrity. So that, there are people who aren't spiritual, people who are maybe atheists or agnostics, but when they're put to it and somebody puts a gun to their head and say, I want you to accept Jesus, or I want you to, convert to another religion, or even religious people, I want you to convert your religion, and they say, you know what, I can't, because the most important thing I have is my integrity. And if they're willing to die for their integrity, they've learned the lesson. And so that means that their identity is something beyond the third dimension. People who are willing to do whatever they need to in order to be accepted by society, by religion, by the political machine, by the narrative. If you're willing to do whatever it takes to be accepted by that, then unfortunately you have let go of your most powerful weapon, which is your own integrity. Now, for the average person in the third dimension, especially up till this point in history, that's pretty much the best you could do. If you held on to your integrity before you passed away, when you left the body, you realized you went up a few points. And you may have even evolved to the point where you don't find the need to reincarnate in the third dimension. Are you listening to my words very carefully? I didn't say you weren't forced back. Nobody is forced into coming here. That's very important. So if we're going to get into interdimensional power, if you really want to be a powerful interdimensional warrior, you must take full responsibility for your infinite power, which means you chose to come here. If you can't accept the idea of choosing to come here, it means you have a lot of growth to do in terms of understanding what your lesson is that you chose to learn. Listen, I haven't seen the worst of what 3D reality can do. There are people that have lived through far worse than I have. But I would not wish my childhood on anybody. It destroyed everybody in my family. My mother, my father, my sister, my brother, they were all completely destroyed by the narcissistic, toxic environment that we all grew up in. I'm definitely not alone, because the third dimension, is the dimension of narcissistic devaluation. It is the dimension where that thrives. If you want to call it the devil, go right ahead. There isn't actually a person walking around or flying around in the depths who is the devil. The devil is that very thing I just mentioned. Narcissistic devaluation, narcissistic toxic devaluation. What is that? Anytime that you get your worth or your value from any place other than inside of yourself, you are part of the toxic, narcissistic narrative. You are being destroyed by it. You are being consumed by it. And there's all different levels of it. Some of it is very obvious. You're with a narcissist, somebody who has like a mental narcissistic illness and is abusive, and we're talking serial killers. That's like as far as it can go. But there's other grades of it. In order to feel accepted, you have to have the right hairdo. In order to feel accepted, you have to have the right clothes. In order to be accepted, you have to have the right body type. In order to be accepted, you have to say the right thing. You have to be part of the right crowd. You have to do something that isn't you in order to be accepted. That is narcissistic devaluation. So the first thing we need to do is we need to understand that the most important act of war against the third dimension is to become fully self-empowered. Now, you don't feel that way, perhaps. That's understandable. That's one of the effects of being in the third dimension. It's not what you feel, it's what you do that is important. And in order to act appropriately, in order to take the actions that will give you the power to walk the path of self-determination, you must be willing to take actions that go completely against your feelings. You must be willing to take actions that go completely against what your brain is telling you to do, what your nervous system is telling you to do. Alcoholics and drug addicts are a great example. Their nervous system and their mind have become addicted, not to mention their psyches have become addicted to an external chemical that gives them a physical feeling. It will kill them. They'd rather die, as they do, than give up that one thing that they have. It is a great example. They take an external chemical in order to feel good about themselves. So to tell them to stop doing that, they may intellectually know it's bad for them and they should stop, but they can't. They can't because they're attached to what their nervous system is telling them they need in order to survive. Now, that's an extreme example, but it's the exact same process that happens with somebody who decides to, I'm going to go and get cosmetic surgery so that somebody will love me. It's the same process. They adopt certain views, they adopt certain politics. They do what their parents did. These are all the exact same internal processes. People are taking actions based on their feeling that they need to do something in order to be loved and accepted. So the first thing that you must do to be an interdimensional warrior, to be successful at interdimensional meditation, or to be very successful at it, the first thing you must do is adopt an assumption. So what is the difference between a feeling, a thought, and an assumption? Feelings and thoughts are reactions. So anybody that tells you that your thoughts create your reality, it's not entirely true. Anybody tells you that your feelings attract your reality, that's not entirely true. Your feelings are nothing more than reactions to stimuli, whether they be internally generated, because you generate internal stimuli all the time. I know I do. And your thoughts are also generated based on your interaction with your own feelings. So thoughts and feelings are not assumptions. You don't have a whole lot of control over them. True, you can make the decision to indulge your thinking into positivity. You can focus on positive memories. I do this kind of stuff all the time. If I'm in a really bad place, which happens to me, if I get into a really bad emotional place, I know I can't necessarily turn my thoughts or my feelings off, but sometimes I go, you know what? I'm going to stop focusing on this negativity, and I'm going to think about something positive. I'm going to look at what I'm grateful for. I'm going to look out my window, or I'm going to go to the beach, or I'm going to go surfing. I'm going to do something, or at the very least focus on the things that make me happy. It doesn't always completely change my internal reality, but it gives me some control. But that's it. You only have some control over your thoughts and your feelings, because these are generated deep in your unconscious mind, and you don't have conscious control over that. That's why they call it the unconscious. What you do have control over is to make the choice to adopt an assumption about reality. Now, an assumption is not necessarily a belief. I believe in the law of gravity because I've experienced it so much. I don't have any doubts about that. I know when I let go of my mouse that it's going to drop into my other hand. See, I know that. That's a belief, but it doesn't take any real effort to believe that. My reality has trained me to believe that. An assumption is not a belief. So you might say, what I'm going to tell you to assume, you're going to say, but I don't believe that. I'm going to say, I don't care if you believe it or not. It doesn't matter to me whether you believe it. What matters is if you adopt the assumption, then your actions will reflect your assumption. So the assumption I want you to accept is first and foremost that your third dimensional reality is an illusion. It is not ultimately real. It is not what I heard a great phrase, base reality. It's not the base reality. It is an illusion. It is a video game. It is a virtual reality 3D projection. It is not total reality. It's the first assumption. So that means that a lot of your thoughts and your feelings and your beliefs are illusions also. They're based on an illusion, so you can't trust them. The second assumption I want you to adopt, which is going to be challenging, is to choose to assume that the universe, which is beyond the third dimension, we're talking fourth, fifth, all the way up till 11 dimensions at least, that reality, once you go up higher than the third dimension, that reality is completely, totally devoted to your happiness. So that, if you can say, yeah, but I haven't seen that in my life. You have no idea what I've been through. Maybe I don't. But remember, we live in an illusion. So all of the pain that you've experienced, all of the messages that you've gotten from this toxic, devaluative 3D world, which has told you that your value is based on what you do, what you have, not who you are. You have bought into that assumption. When you accept the assumption that you do not have value within yourself, you immediately go into a state of trauma. So all humans are in a state of PTSD unless They are very deeply connected to a spiritual reality that gives them a different experience. So the average third dimensional person is in a state of trauma because they believe and they act from the assumption that their value is based on how they look, how much money they have, how many friends they have, how successful they are, how much sex they're having, how much fame they have, whether or not they have the right religion or they don't have a religion, whether or not they went to the right school, whether or not they're married and have kids. There are people that base their whole lives based on all of these because if they don't do those things, they won't have any worth. This is why, again, there are people out there that you can't get them off the street. They're homeless people, even if you handed them money. There was I was watching a documentary about the guy. I won't get into it. If I could remember the guy's name, you'd know who I was talking about. But it was this homeless guy. And he became very famous for a very short period of time. He's now in jail for murder. But he became very famous for a very short period of time. And so he became this darling of the media. And they tried to get him off the street. And they handed him $500 to go on television. So he took the $500 and he's homeless, doesn't have any money, doesn't have any place to live, lives on the street. And he went and handed it to somebody. He handed $500 to a stranger. He didn't feel comfortable with money because he didn't feel like he had any value in and of himself. And so, people like that, no matter what you do, they will not go away from what they believe their value is. And it's so deeply entrenched in all of us. So, interdimensional warriors make the assumption, this is the war part. A warrior does something that is not easy for he or she to do, him or her to do. And if you, like the rest of us, have been programmed to believe that your value comes from something outside of yourself, then it will be very difficult for you to take action based on the assumption that your value is based solely on the fact that you exist. So that's the assumption. Your value, which is infinite, you have as much value, whatever your religion, as God. If you want to think about whatever it is, the most valuable thing, God, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus. Think of the one individual in the universe and then think of the person that has the most value in the universe. You have the equal amount of value as that being, which of course is not what religion teaches you, right? Religion teaches you something else. But the truth of the matter is the fundamental base truth of existence, of conscious existence, is that all conscious beings are equally valuable. And all conscious beings have infinite value. Each conscious being has the value of the most infinite God you could ever imagine. So if you accept that assumption, even though you don't feel it, because your third dimensional reality will not tell you that. If you accept that assumption, then you can take actions based on that. So that's the first thing that interdimensional warriors do, is they take action based on the assumption that their consciousness gives them absolute total value, relevance, and lovability. And there is literally nothing you can do. There is nothing you can do which will increase your lovability or value. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean that you can't take destructive actions toward yourself and others. But it won't change anything, no matter how badly you damage yourself, no matter how badly you treat others, which will build up a bunch of negative karma that you will choose to then work through once you leave this body. But that won't change your ultimate value. So no matter how far down you've gone, no matter how bad you think you are, right now, this very second, you can simply decide, I have complete, total value in and of myself. This is what Christianity is all about. This is why Christianity became so popular. Because it's trying to do what I just said. When Jesus saves you, he says, look, you're sinful, which is another way of saying you don't have any value. But I am going to purchase your value. I'll give it back to you. I will do something in order to get God's approval, and then I will be able to get God to give you my value. That's what Jesus says. I am the Son of God. I'm perfect. I'm everything. I have all value. I am lovable. I'm going to give you my lovability. So when people accept Jesus, they're right about one thing, which is that the whole idea of Jesus is to give you your worth back. But the illusion is that you lost it. It ends up being a fake badge that doesn't mean anything. Because the only way you can truly get your worth back is by deciding that your worth is within you, and your worth is simply the fact that you exist. And when you truly internalize that truth, you will begin to take actions based on that. So people who are loving and kind, who are authentic, they're not codependent people pleasers. They are loving and kind genuinely and authentically. It means that they have a sense of value within themselves, because you can't love and give to others unconditionally unless you see yourself in them. Jesus doesn't see himself in you, by the way, because if he did, he would say, my sacrifices doesn't mean anything. All you have to do is be like me. Just choose to love yourself completely, and then you'll be exactly like I am. If Jesus were real, that's what he would say. That's what Odin says. Odin sacrificed himself to himself on the tree of life. As a result of sacrificing his little ego to his true identity, his divine identity, the secrets of the universe revealed themselves to him, called the runes in Old Norse, and he, screaming, picked up the runes, and what happened? He became king of the gods. It's all symbolic. You are king of the gods if that's what you choose to be. But in order to do that, you'll have to see yourself in everybody. You'll have to become absolutely equal with everybody. The man who is equal to everybody is the king of the universe. Okay, so you cannot fight 3D with 3D. So you have to do it with higher dimensional tools. So what does interdimensional meditation feel like? That was the whole point of this video. I started getting into the interdimensional warrior aspect. So interdimensional meditation is, I've been doing spiritual practice my whole life. I mean, I've been doing spiritual practice, we could say 60 years. I'm almost 60. I'm going to be 60 in September. It's going to be May. So you do the maths, depending on what country you're in. And I've never felt anything like interdimensional meditation. That's not entirely true. There have been a few periods in my life where I had huge spiritual awakenings, and now looking back on it in hindsight, I now know I was having an interdimensional experience. But it wasn't from anything I did. It was interdimensional beings were giving me a brief experience, which I've never forgotten. And those are the powerful aha spiritual moments of my life. It happens when you see a spirit, when you see an angel, when you have a very powerful intuitive experience that makes you realize something, when you talk to a loved one that's passed away. These are all interdimensional experiences. So for me, based on my chart, as I said, I've got Jupiter retrograde in the 8th house in Pisces. That means my interdimensional experience is incredibly intense, and it is very connected to my unconscious mind. So very, very transformative. The 8th house is a shamanic house of death and resurrection on the deepest shamanic level. So now you understand why it's been so incredibly profound for me. Your experience may be different, but I can tell you some of the things for me. One of the things that happens when I know I'm going to have a very, I was going to say successful, but that's probably not the right word. When I know I'm going to have a very powerful interdimensional experience, I will feel a very intense energy in my heart center and in my solar plexus sometimes. Sometimes it'll go down into my navel, but it starts here in the heart center. And when I'm doing the interdimensional protocol where I'm imagining myself leaving Earth's atmospheres, I'm looking back at Earth and I'm backing out of Earth's atmosphere, I will feel an intense feeling in my gut as though, you're on a roller coaster and you're going up. You'll feel the G's. It'll feel very intense like that for me. And then what will happen if I am able to have the experience of energetically interacting and or communicating with a higher dimensional being, I will feel that energy begin to increase all by itself, and it will start to spread, sometimes throughout my whole body. So that's the main thing that I experience. But I want to tell you something, that's not necessary. That is not necessary. But if you do feel it, that is a sure sign that you are having an interdimensional experience. When I do actually the better way to say this is when I'm in my 3D mind, when I'm walking around in 3D, and higher dimensional energies come to me, I will start to feel something that feels at first like anxiety. Like, when you're really anxious, you have a really intense anxious feeling in your heart center. That will start to hit me, and I'll then wonder why I'm feeling anxious. And then I'll realize, oh, I'm not. This is interdimensional energy. I've gotten so used to it because I'm sitting here talking to you now. It's happening to me now because they get very interested when I talk about interdimensional anything. And so I feel this energy as I'm doing this. So I've learned to just get used to it. But sometimes it'll hit really hard and I'll think I'm having an anxiety attack. Sometimes interdimensional energy can actually result in the feeling of anxiety. And the reason for that is that interdimensional energy in and of itself separates you from third dimensional bondage. And your third dimensional self, which believes it needs certain things in order to survive, will start to become anxious because it will feel out of control, number one. Your third dimensional self will not feel like it's in control of its 3D reality. And number two, you will start to die. Every time you experience higher dimensional energy, you die like Odin, a little bit to your false self. And that will create anxiety. Death is something, death is death. And if we're talking about a mental or a psychological or a spiritual death and not a physical one, you will still feel the anxiety, the fear that comes from disconnecting from what your third dimensional aspects believe is your safe place, which is 3D. You wonder why people are still addicted to violence. Violence is not a safe thing to be addicted to. They're addicted to anger. They're addicted to abusive relationships. They're addicted to being abusive. That goes against even three-dimensional survival techniques. Why do people still keep doing that? Because it gives you a false sense of control over your third dimensional reality. And that's why people do it. They're doing it because they think they have to do it to survive. So you will have to learn how to survive without doing any 3D things. Getting rid of victim mentality. Victim mentality is a survival mechanism. Even though you don't like it, it doesn't feel good, it gives you a sense of comfort and safety in the third dimension. So we got to drop the victim mentality. Anger. Anger does not serve us. So the kind of anger I'm talking about is not the kind of anger somebody cuts you off and you get a flash of anger for 30 seconds. You realize you're safe, you're not going to crash, you get over it. That's normal. The guy cuts you off and you're still angry at him, an hour later, a day later, a week later. Then that kind of anger doesn't serve you. You got to learn how to drop that. And if you have real problems with that, you can get a session with me and I can tell you a technique how to get rid of resentments. Self-righteousness. There's a lot of people still that come onto my channel who love what I teach, but whenever they start talking about the deep state or things like that, they get full of this self-righteousness and they start talking about deep state human beings as being evil and how to destroy them and other things like that. You have to get rid of that. Because again, if you are fully self-empowered, you see that everybody, no matter how far down the scale, they are equal to you. They are just trapped in their fear and their delusion. So you have to have compassion. The interdimensional warrior is somebody who wants to free every conscious being, like the Buddha. So I'm talking similar things as Buddhism, even though I'm not Buddhist. But an interdimensional warrior, first and foremost, your primary goal is your freedom from three-dimensional bondage and to awaken to your interdimensional self. And concurrent with that is the exact same desire for every single other being in the world, including the most evil. Lenin, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, whoever you think is the worst person in the world, you must want their liberation. If you haven't got there yet, that's okay. Now you have some work to do. When you look at your own self-devaluation and you heal from that, you will have less and less need to become self-righteous and angry towards other 3D humans who are trapped. So these are some of the things you get from interdimensional meditation. Now you're saying, I don't have any of that stuff. Great. Not a problem. You're filled with anxiety, you're filled with fear, you're filled with self-hatred, you're filled with shame, you're filled with feelings of inadequacy, of insecurity, you're full of hatred, revenge, anger, self-righteousness, narcissism. Cool. All that means is that you're a 3D human. Every 3D human has that to some degree, and the level of doesn't matter. So the good news is you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be without any of that stuff. Fake enlightenment. That's what fake enlightenment is. I have nothing but happiness for everybody. I have no desires. I have no sexual needs. I have no anger. Everything is perfect. That's all nonsense. That's total crap. There's no human on the planet that feels like that. Sorry, I don't care who they are. Even the Buddha never felt that. Never felt that way. It was always a struggle for him. It's always going to be a struggle for you until we achieve 5D. So you have all kinds of human stuff, not a problem. You do interdimensional meditation, and what will happen is you will give permission to beings who live in a higher dimension, who do not operate from those lower level emotions. And if you give them permission and you ask for their help, you ask them to reach into your third dimensional state. You are seeking to reach into their fifth dimensional state. When you do that, I promise you, things will change. Maybe you'll have a huge experience like I did. Maybe a mantis being will beam down into your room and put his finger on your crown chakra and make you go through hell for 3 months. Or maybe, like some people, you'll get a nice little ride up to the moon and be able to look down at Earth and go, see, from up here it's not that bad. Maybe you'll have no conscious experience at all, but you'll notice that things are starting to get a little bit better in your life. That you're feeling a little less frightened and angry. Or you may start to find that a lot of feelings are coming to the surface and you're crying a lot, or you're getting rid of, you might feel like, why do I feel so anxious? Well, it's because you're now vibrating closer to that fifth dimension, and that third dimensional reality that you believe is your safety survival mechanism is starting to come apart. So you're feeling that anxiety I talked about earlier. So, but what is the most important thing when it comes to interdimensional meditation? In order to be a successful interdimensional warrior and meditator, you must consciously make the decision to ask higher dimensional beings and give them permission to interact with you through the dimensional barrier. That is the only requirement. You must consciously choose to do that. Because let me again attack your false, fear-based, three-dimensional survival belief that tells you that there are higher dimensional beings that are predatory, that want to trick you into reincarnating, or want to steal your energy, or want to lie to you, or manipulate you, or harm you in some way. You're conflating them with lower dimensional demons, which do exist, but they exist in the third dimension or below. In fact, demons who have come into the third dimension have come from the second dimension. So, five-dimensional beings will not do that to you. So you must choose to assume that and drop that belief. If you need help, you can ask them. You can say, my five-dimensional friend, can you please help me overcome my fear? You can do that. But even though you're afraid, even though you're not sure of what's going on, by choosing to decide that you are going to go beyond the third dimension and you are going to seek the help of higher dimensional beings to do it, that choice is the only thing which will guarantee your success. Now, what will happen? First time that I had interdimensional meditation, I have a video on my channel. It's called How I Became an Extraterrestrial, and I give you video proof. My first CE5, which is interdimensional meditation. The first time I did that, something showed up. I caught it on my phone. Some orb was flying over me. I didn't see it. There's a voice in there. I asked when my radio went off, which was one of the things that they do to let you know that they've arrived. Which, by the way, they don't do now. I can't pull out my radio and say, okay, they don't do that now. They only do it, the only other times they've done it is when I was in a hurricane and I was afraid for my life. And then they showed up on the radio to let me know they were there. But first time around, you might need something like a ham radio or something like that so that they can let you know I'm a real being even though you can't see me. But even though that was going on, I said, are you here? And I've caught on audio somebody saying yes, but I didn't hear it because I couldn't. I was so in my 3D mind, I couldn't hear anything or see or experience anything beyond the third dimension. That's why an orb was flying over me and I didn't see it, but my camera caught it. That's why there was an audible voice that answered when I said, are you here? It said yes, and I didn't hear it. So it took me until the third time before I had an experience. Bear in mind, I was absolutely committed. I was scared out of my mind because I didn't know what any of it meant. I had only seen and heard a little bit about it on YouTube and on video, so I thought I'd give it a try, but I didn't know what any of it meant. So I was quite scared. So you can be afraid and all of that, but the good news is that your choice goes beyond your feelings. And I was absolutely determined, and I told whatever beings were out there, I said, I am absolutely determined, even if it kills me, I want to have the deepest possible experience that a human can have. And to my great satisfaction and gratitude, they gave me exactly that. They gave me more than literally I could physically handle. Now, you don't have to have that experience if you don't want. But you do have to choose to have that experience. You do interdimensional meditation, it doesn't work the first time. Do it a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth. And when you do interdimensional meditation, follow the protocol. Ask, invite higher dimensional beings to come visit you. Okay? Now, if you want to be a part of my crew, if you want to be part of my army, then you can go onto the YouTube channel and you can look for guided interdimensional meditations. I have a few of them. If you want to learn how I started interacting with them on a personal level, you can go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe to the interdimensional meditation course. You might as well subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, which is $1 more a month, because those exercises, which I have now confirmed are in fact the most powerful energy practices in the history of the human race. I have confirmed that. In fact, I just recently got a comment from somebody that said, I've been doing Qigong for years and I have never felt anything like this. And I hear this all the time. Qigong masters, yoga masters, Tai Chi masters, they all say the same thing. I've never felt this much energy in my life. So this energy will open your meridians and it will help to create a vortex that you can use to invite higher dimensional beings into your 3D experience, and you can go further towards them. So go to thunderwizard.com, subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. You have nothing to lose because you can unsubscribe whenever you want. It's the price of a freaking video game. So, you know, isn't it weird? People play video games while they're living a video game. You're already living a video game. You play a video game within a video game. No, I am giving you a portal to reality, higher dimensional reality, which is beyond this third dimensional video game. So go and subscribe there and do that. And if you do that every single day, you can do I have 3 different things you can do. You can do a morning routine, an afternoon, and an evening routine. Or you can just pick the morning or the evening. But if you do something every single day, I guarantee you a shift. I don't know exactly what your experience will be. Most people have powerful emotional and physical energetic experiences. But even if you don't, your life will start to get better. I guarantee it. Because actually doing the Lightning Qigong is a form of interdimensional meditation. That opens up a portal, and what I didn't realize the 40 years that I was doing it is that interdimensional beings actually were being called down every time I did any of the stuff that I teach. But because I didn't know, I could reach out to them and say, hey, can I have a personal experience with you? Because I didn't know that, I didn't know to ask. You have to ask, otherwise they won't show up. Courses.thunderwizard.com. And if you really want to understand what this is all about, you can get my book, Interdimensional Revolution and Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth. Go to Amazon, Kindle, and Audible for those, or you can go to Michael William Denny. Denny is spelled D-E-N-N-E-Y, michaelwilliamdenny.com to see all of my books. That's it, my friends. So I'm going to do more videos, which I'm going to upload to Rumble, about what it really means to be an interdimensional warrior and what we are going to war against, and the things that I am doing and accomplishing on higher dimensional levels, and what you can be doing with me on higher dimensional levels, and other such stuff. So go to Rumble and subscribe there for those. But I'll keep uploading stuff here on this channel as well. So that's it. I'm looking for people who want to join an army of spiritual interdimensional warriors to help bring us up to 5D. And hopefully I've given you some understanding. We didn't even get to talk about DMT, the interdimensional gateway, but I will do that on other videos. That's it for me, my friends. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for showing up. I love you all, and my entire life is completely devoted to your awakening and your empowerment. And I invite you to join me in this march toward complete total awakening while being in the physical body. That's it. Talk to you later.